Good evening. Can everyone hear me? No. Good evening. There we go. My name is Howard Graham. I am the Associate Director for Academic Programs in the Office of First Year Experience. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's event with artist Willie Cole. Before we begin the formal program, I have just a few announcements. First, for folks that may not be familiar with the space, the restrooms are out the back and down the hallway on the left. We will have refreshments following the talk out behind the auditorium, and please enjoy those as you leave tonight. You may have noticed when you came in some print material on a table just before you entered the auditorium. Those include wonderful postcards and posters designed by Jeffrey McKee, the graphic designer here in the Spencer Museum of Art, as well as bookmarks of Willie Cole's work. Those are for you. Please take anything that you would like for this evening, and perhaps we can have Willie Cole sign some too at the end if you'd like that and if he would be willing. We are going to have a period of time at the end for question and answer. This event is being live streamed, and it's important that you use the microphone in order that we can pick up your voice on the live stream. So when we go to the question and answer period, if you have a question, please raise your hand, and Amy or myself or somebody will bring around a microphone to you. And finally, a very important announcement. Please silence your cell phones. I'm going to physically do that right now myself so that we can maximize the experience for everyone. Now it's my pleasure to introduce D'Angela Burns-Wallace, Vice Provost for Undergraduate Studies, who will introduce tonight's program. D'Angela.
Good evening. It is a pleasure to join you here this evening as we think about this evening as a celebration with the artists that we have with us. The relationship with undergraduate studies, in particular our Office of First Year Experience and the Spencer Museum of Art, is a long one. And it has multifacets. So beyond this evening, we have hundreds of students who have come through our University 101 courses and our first year seminars who have done work in the museum this fall alone. Through one of our learning communities, we had the students through the Life Through a Lens community actually worked to curate the American Dream exhibit that is gonna open next week in the museum. And under the direction of Kate Myers, who you'll hear from a little bit later, who is the curator of Works on Paper at the museum, and she developed an exhibit to accompany and be in conversation with this year's KU Common Book, Between the World and Me. But one of the strongest components of our partnership is the event that we are holding tonight, and that is the Common Work of Art program. We have a common work of art as long as we have had the KU Common Book, so all 5 years we have worked in partnership to identify this work. The KU Common Book and the Common Work of Art, they work in concert, really seeing how they speak to each other through the different genres. The KU Common Work of Art brings the visual elements to each year's Common Book programming. Willie Cole will be our third KU Common Work of Art artist that has been able to actually join us in the 5 years of programming. So we are very excited for this evening. One of the things about the KU Common Work of Art program and the Visiting Artist series is that it truly speaks to the mission of undergraduate studies and the Spencer Museum of Art. The program gives our students a unique opportunity to intellectually engage with the themes from the Common Book through the vision and genius of the celebrated artists. The Common Work of Art program is part of a larger commitment by the Spencer Museum of Art to provide experiential learning experiences to our KU students. Between our offices, we try to bring our students and expose them to aspects and ways of thinking that they may not always get directly in the classroom. And that complement to what they are learning and how they think is what we know helps them not only thrive as they are going through their undergraduate experience, but truly to be successful, to think critically, to think differently about the world around them, the issues that they are facing, and the issues that they are tackling in the classroom through every major and every subject. Our collaboration between undergraduate studies and, again, particularly our Office of First Year Experience and the Spencer Museum of Art is also a larger collaboration with many other partners from around the institution that are sponsors tonight that Kate will identify and thank as she introduces our speaker. With that, I hope that this evening is one in which you explore, that you enjoy, that you ask questions, that it is a point where we are truly thinking about intellectually, how do we think about the works of art? How do we think about the issues that our society and our students and us as community members are grappling with day to day in our society? And what can we learn? What can we think differently about from where this art and this celebrated artist pushes us to think and to understand? With that, I'll turn it over to Kate so she can introduce the man of the moment.
Hi there. I'm Kate Meyer. I'm a curator here at the museum. A mentor of mine, Wendell Berry, once said that if you ask the right questions, it'll lead you out of your discipline. And if the breadth of the sponsors who have made this evening possible are any indication, Willie Cole is asking the right questions. So this evening, I'm going to read off the people who've helped make it possible. If you identify with one of these entities in particular and you want to woo for them, I'm going to let you do that. So there's the Spencer Museum of Art, woo. There's the Office of First Year Experience. There's the Office of the Multicultural Affairs. There's the University Honors Program. There's the Kress Foundation Department of Art History. There's the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. There's the Department of African and African American Studies, and the Department of American Studies. So, many of you, I thought that would be fun. The thanking part is not always as exciting, but wooing is exciting, so thank you all for making this evening possible. Many of you may know Willie Cole through the prints we've selected as the common work of art this year. And I thought I would give you some inside baseball knowledge and read to you from the proposal that I wrote suggesting that the Spencer should acquire these prints. I've been drawn to Cole's Beauties since I learned of their publication in 2012, but I'm compelled to propose them for acquisition now in response to the selection of Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me as KU's 2016-2017 Common Book. Their imagery has a comparable metaphorical resonance with the book in that the ironing board, something with associations and meanings we overlook, can be seen through Cole's presentation as representative of broader and insidious additional associations. I think this nicely parallels Coates' exploration of the American dream as a notion Americans take for granted as positive and aspirational, yet is inexorably interwoven with racism. The Beauties have moved from their previous location in our Learning Center. They're currently on display upstairs as the first works that are installed in what will become the exhibition called American Dream, which opens on March 11th. So we hope you'll come back. You could look at the prints kind of standing alone, resplendent, but they'll be joined by others very soon. For a hint of what Cole has been up to since creating these prints, last fall, the David C. Driscoll Center for the Study of the Visual Arts and Culture of African Americans and the African Diaspora at the University of Maryland organized the 10-year career survey, Willie Cole on Site. This exhibition will be touring at the University of Pennsylvania and the University of New Hampshire throughout this year, and I bet you're going to be learning more about it shortly. To paraphrase and recontextualize a fairly creepy movie quotation, I get older and older, but the student body at a university stays the same age. Willie Cole visited KU almost exactly 13 years ago, and on that evening, I was a graduate student sitting in this audience. So to the students here tonight, or any of you who don't know what you are about to expect, you're in for something special. So please join me in welcoming Willie Cole.
Tough act to follow. Nobody said it was going to be an opening act. But I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be the focus of this moment. And the Beauties are women. So I want to start like this.
Voodoo has given woman, in the figure of Erzulie, exclusive title to that which distinguishes humans from all other forms, their capacity to conceive beyond reality, to desire beyond adequacy, to create beyond need. Crowded peristyle among all these bodies which move with such homogeneity, there may be one whose movements are exceedingly spectacular. This is a sign that a Loa arrives. Voodoo salutes woman as the divinity of the dream, a goddess of love, the muse of beauty. She is identified with the Virgin Mary as mother of man's myth of life. In a sense, she is that very principle by which man conceives and creates divinity. To man himself, she is as mistress.
These are the beauties in my life that inspired the Beauties. This begins with my Grandma Queen, who was my great-great-grandmother, and that's one of her daughters on her lap there. Here is, as you can read for yourself, my great-grandfather in the middle, the male. The older woman on the left is his mother. That's my mother on your left, I guess. My grandmother next to her, and my sister on her lap. But I'm in this picture too, because my mom is pregnant. So I'm the prince in the belly, a good title for a film. Now, the seated woman here is my great-grandmother, and she is the real inspiration for the Beauties, and for most of my work that involves iron and ironing boards. She worked as a domestic for a doctor in South Bound Brook, New Jersey, all of my life. She passed away, I think, in 1993 at about 97 years old. And here is my grandmother, my mother, and my aunt. And this is my great-grandmother again there with my sister and my grandmother. So, as I said, she worked as a domestic, which pretty much meant that she did all the ironing and the washing. I always wondered if she did more than that because she just had that look about her sometimes. And the iron is how she connects to my art. If I can get this laser pointer to work here. Yellow button in the middle, okay. Okay, I'm gonna take this and walk over there. So the iron, of course, is the first link to the work because the work uses the iron. But I found an iron that had been run over by a car on the streets of Newark, New Jersey in 1988. And the iron was crushed. When I saw it, I didn't recognize it as anything except for a crushed iron initially, but something impelled me to pick it up and bring it to my studio. Once I did that, I photographed it, kept it around for a while, and I began to see it as all kinds of things. So I made a list of those things. This chart represents that list years later for presentations like this. But originally it was a list of words. So I saw a silver iron with a black handle. I saw the silver as money, and I saw the black for everything the word black means, including black people. So that led to the domestic worker, like my great-grandmother, who in this case was a mammy. It also led to the everyday American housewife, this one being of the 50s. Now, I also recognize that the domestic worker was a descendant of a slave, and that the housewife lived in a house, of course. So I began to think of it like kind of like math. So if I took the black from the iron and saw this person as a slave and saw the shape of the iron as a boat, then I would end up with a slave ship. And that if of course, the slave ship would, of course, link me to the slave and the continent of Africa. I saw that if I saw the silver of the iron bottom as currency, I would see a beautiful home and possibly a wealthy family, or at least a family that was wealthier than I was as a kid. So all those became the physical, historical attributes that the iron suggested to me. But I go up to the next level and I think about the iron in all of its functions. I recognize the element of iron with 30 protons, 20 neutrons in the center here. I think about how this is a steam iron. It needs water for steam. And on this side, it needs heat to make the steam. So now I can make art about the iron and talk about those elements. So then to take it to a spiritual level, I recognize that in the West African religions and the religions that are based on that same religion, Contemplé, Voodoo, Ifa, various ones around the diaspora, that they have gods that represent all these elements. So you have the goddess who represents water, Yemeya, the god whose element is iron, Ogun, and the god of thunder, Shango, which is heat and fire, etc. So all of those things gave me the interest and the ability to speak about the African American experience, the African diasporic experience, about slavery, all with the steam iron. Thanks to my great-grandmother. So these pieces, thank you, are not chronological, but this might be the last piece that I did involving irons and women specifically. I think it might be kind of obvious, but it is a silkscreen print. I tried to use the colors that represent all the female Orishas in the pantheon of the Yoruba gods. And I think the rest is all self-explanatory. You know, the woman is life, woman is beauty, woman is love. In this case, woman is also fire. But the beauties that are here, you don't have these exact ones, but there are actually about 25 of them. And they all have these antebellum names or names that, from the women in my family, the older women who were nodding in front of TV when I was a little kid, who'd fall asleep, who'd sing in the choir in church, etc. My great-grandma, Grandma Queen, my great-great-grandma, Grandma Queen, my great-grandmother, Fannie Mae, my father's sister, Dot, all those kind of names. I mean, some of you may have some of them in your family. Those names we don't hear anymore. Beulah, Eva Mae. And the iron came before the ironing board. I guess I could tell you how those other prints were made, since this is an art museum. But they were made by finding irons in thrift stores, surfing those irons down a hill in a parking lot of a High Point studio, which is in Minnesota, hammering them with the iron to flatten them out, give them a lot of life and character, and then putting ink on them and running them through a press so they would have a little more bite to their appearance. Now, this shows the variety of iron bottoms in the world. The bottom of the iron is called the sole plate. So this shows the variety of soles in the world. And in my personal mythology or fantasies that have grown around the image and the physical steam iron, I think of each of these sole plates representing the various tribes. So in the world of Willie Cole's art, the people of iron come different tribes. You got the Sunbeams, you got the Silexes, you got the Black and Deckers, et cetera, et cetera. And they're all represented by their sole plate because the images that result from the scorch become the scarification for each of those tribe members. So here you have me as a Silex male, dressed in my ritual scarification. And here you have me as a Sunbeam male, dressed in my Sunbeam scarification. And I don't have any of these tattoos in real life. This is all technology and Photoshop. Here you have what I call 5 stances of domestic defense. And these were inspired by a Japanese woodblock artist named Hokusai. He had a piece called The Sparrow Dance that I always loved. So I chose to do the same thing with, or something inspired by that with the scorches. And these are all Proctor Silex scorches here. Each figure is on a separate sheet of paper and it's 18 by 24 inches. These are probably the things that came to my mind after I discovered that the iron had a lot of Africanness in it, because it was during or close to the time of the end of apartheid in South Africa. And I was part of the Art Against Apartheid movement in New Jersey. And through that, I'd been exposed to a lot of Zulu art and recognized that the ironing board with scorches was just like, visually like the Zulu shield. So I made a series of those sometime back in the 80s. You can see them here in color. And they're named after the tribes. So this might be this is the GE, domestic shield. That's the Proctor Silex domestic shield there. That's the Sunbeam here. Ironically, though, just about a month ago, I found this picture here on YouTube. And these are students at a college demonstration in South Africa using ironing boards as shields. So we talk about life imitating art, or maybe clairvoyance, but unfortunately, this image on YouTube is just the page. When you get to the video, you don't see them lined up with the boards like you do here. Instead, you see the cars running over the boards and the students running. So I guess it starts with the image after this. So this image is the same as what I just described to you, except this was not, happening a month ago in Johannesburg. I call this piece Zulu in Silex, because these are Proctor Silex irons, 2 of them end to end, making what looks like a Zulu shield. And I'm referencing the war between the British and Zulus, and imagine that when that battle was over, the field was littered with Zulu shields. This is actually a scorch on paper. I wish it was this big. I think I'm gonna have to make it this big. But it is pretty big. It's about 48 by 48. Another famous image related to the steam iron is the image of the slave ship. A famous graphic that's known as Brooks' slave ship shows the cargo or the stowage. And my mom had purchased a book for me as a kid called Ebony Magazine's Guide to Negro History. And it came out every year. And in that year, I found this photo in 1994. I had the book since the 60s. I was a little kid. And when I found the book in the 90s, I saw this image this way. And it led me to make this piece here. So now my slave ship is the ironing board, and all my tribes are here. The GE, the Proctor Silex, Those are all the tribes there. And this is, these objects are embedded in plywood to make this plate, so it's a pretty big piece. It's 8 feet by 4 feet. A woodblock print. And it's called Stowage. This thing was made in 1997 there, it looks like. So this continues on with irons, even though there's not an iron visible. But there was a school in New Jersey that was part of the era where they taught black folks how to be servants and housekeepers and all that kind of stuff. And my aunt actually went to that school. The school closed down about maybe 15 years ago, and they published a photo in the paper of 2 women, or a bunch of women ironing, learning to iron in school. So I took that photo and kind of gave it a Willie cold wash to turn it into this work of art here. So the first iron I found on the street, after having it in my studio as a photograph, as a Polaroid, I began to see it as a Dan mask, the Dan being from Liberia. So these are 2 Dan masks being worn by 2 of the women. Actually, you can cut this in half. It's really one image flip because I'm a symmetry addict. So it showed a woman ironing, so I made that woman Dan by giving her that mask. And the symbol up top is actually the Haitian voodoo symbol for Ogun, the Orisha of iron. And here we have 26 protons, 30 neutrons, which is iron also. And in my imagination, when I look at this, I see these 2 women resuscitating Ogun, who is the god of iron. I mean, if you saw the real thing, you might get a better sense of that. With this being his head back here, just as kind of his hair sticking up from the front, his body's laid out. Legs are coming down here like that.
It's like cowrie shells.
I accept that. Thank you. So I have that touch of the Yoruba inspiration in my work for lots of reasons. One, because I'm an African American and I grew up during the time of Black conscious movement in the city of Newark, where there was African dance class and African classes and all kinds of things that just made us graduate from colored to Negro to Afro-American to Black and to African American. And I was born in 1955. So here I list the primary Yoruba deities just to show that everyone has a Christian counterpart. So, you know, it's the one I've been drawn to the most in my work is Ilegba. And I think that you'll see that in my work, my Ilegba has been represented by the American lawn jockey, because the lawn jockey and Ilegba have the same colors, and they have the same symbols. You see I have some of the symbols listed here. And I know I'm in Kansas, right, not Missouri. So you may have seen lawn jockeys in the streets or in front of people's houses. I know I've seen them in New Jersey, even in the 80s. But I have a list of the things the attributes. And this juxtaposition came to me from reading a book by an author named John Mason, who's a Yoruba priest, called Black Gods in the New World. And I was actually on my way to San Francisco to do an installation, reading this book on the flight, and it kind of just gave me a whole new chapter in my work. So jumping ahead 20 years, I did these paintings kind of based on the Ilegba principle, where I use a lawn jockey as Ilegba. Now, the first video I showed was by a filmmaker named Myra Darren, and her book was called The Divine Horseman. And that book was about Haitian voodoo and voodoo ceremonies and voodoo dance, especially because she was interested in choreography. And the divine horseman means that the gods are the divine horsemen, and the people in the ceremony are the horses. So if you are, say if you are in a Pentecostal church or a Baptist church, and you become possessed or catch the Holy Ghost, as we say in the West, then that means that you are being ridden by that God, or ridden by the God, depending on your point of view. So the people in the ceremony become the horses, and the spirits becomes the gods. So Ilegba in the traditional West African Yoruba ceremony is the first deity that you make an offering to, because Elegba is the gatekeeper. The same way in Christianity, everything is in Jesus' name, amen. A lot of people don't want to go straight to God. They got to go through Jesus. You know? So this is kind of the same way, but you go through Elegba to reach the higher spirits. So if you, the worshiper, are the horse, and Elegba is the first god that brings you to the next gods, that's what this painting is. This Elegba piece here, he's called Delivery Boy, and he's delivering the horse from the darkness to the light. Now, in order for Elegba to deliver your prayers, you have to submit. You make an offering, etc. So this horse is in submission, and he's about to receive that opportunity. Two Elegbas there, because the Elegba is the deity at the crossroads. Whenever you're standing in the middle of a cross, you got four choices, you know. And so it has two images of him there, one dark and one light. Also known as a trickster, so dark and light. This piece is called Special Delivery, because the popular songs, especially in the 80s, a song by David Byrne and Talking Heads was called Papa Legba, and the lyric is Papa Legba, open the gate. So here he's walking the horse right through the gates to the higher realm. So the lawn jockey, the steam iron, but the lawn jockey exists for me on many levels, and I recognize the various levels. I mean, my work has been described as like an onion with lots of layers. You peel the skin off, a skin off, a skin off. So I look for those things, you know. It's not a search, but it's more of an openness and an acceptance. So I recognize that the parable of the sower is a lawn jockey or an Elegba story. And I guess you can read it for yourself there. And Van Gogh's sower. He's sowing seeds. Elegba sows seeds. Elegba will present ideas to you for you to choose from. Some will take root. Some will go by the wayside. So it's just a sower. So Van Gogh's lawn jockey. I actually made this at the installation about 10 years ago at a museum in New Jersey. And I made this visual graphic to express the overlay between the sower, the Bible, and the lawn jockey. So here's all they have in common. As I said, is the presenter of choices, which is the planting of the seeds. So it all resulted in this piece called the Elegba Principle. And this is a room of revolving doors. There's text on every door. So each door from the top view is a cross, which is another Elegba symbol. And as you walk through the door, nobody tells you which way to go. You got to make your own choices. So you can walk to like new wife, fried chicken, Chevy Malibu, et cetera, et cetera. And this video shows that. The video was made before we put the words on the door because the camera crew arrived early. But you'll get the idea of it. This is at Cap Street in San Francisco. It's myself and the gallery director walking through. And a homeless man I met on the street, opera singer, who I wanted to sing at my opening, but he kind of chickened out at the end. It's about 200 doors. That's not an even number, so it must be 224 doors. It's kind of a growing thing. I still collect doors. You know, my goal is to see it the size of a football field. And some great things have happened inside this installation. In San Francisco, a gentleman came to the door that said marriage and proposed to his girlfriend. I recreated this piece for a museum in Paris also. So there's a French version of it there. afraid to go through because you never. If a door is 3 feet wide, you're never in a space bigger than 3 by 3, and that makes some people a little uptight. Also, when it's installed, I have surveillance cameras so people outside the installation can see people walking through it. Because some people really are afraid to walk in. And this version of it is on a long-term loan at a place called the Art Factory in Paterson, New Jersey. So you come to Jersey, you can experience this. Opera singer there. So this is, I think, the final lawn jockey image. You see the Yoruba version of Elegba over there. Popular Elegba you find in people's home, just a cement block with cowrie shell eyes. And this piece is called Point of View because Elegba presents choices which are all point of views. So this is you see the world through daisies. The previous one, you see the world through wealth. You see the world through jewels. You see the world through gummy bears, through candy. You see the world through rice, but the rice has another special meaning and power. Also, Elegba is a warrior. There are certain gods that are warriors. So, as Saint Sebastian filled with arrows, as the Ninkisi filled with nails, I decided to see Elegba, in my case, the lawn jockey, in the same way. But the piece that I will show you was also inspired by that Malcolm X speech. Malcolm has a speech called The House Negro and the Field Negro. The field Negro is the Ninkisi Negro. I never used that word before, but Ninkisi Negro. So it's the lawn jockey filled with nails with the war skirt on and feathers. The house Negro is the straight-out American lawn jockey holding a Christian cross. Although he's seeing the world through cowrie shells, used for divination, so he's got wishes and dreams of his own. But outwardly, he appears to just be one of the boys. And you can see the field Negro here. So this piece is called House and Field. The field has mirrored eyes because you're in a spiritual battle. If your enemy looks at you and sees himself in your eyes and he's trying to scare you, he'll scare himself. So that's why he has that.
Je crois en Dieu le Père Tout-Puissant, créateur des cieux et de la terre, Jésus-Christ, son Fils unique, Seigneur, qui a été conçu du Saint-Esprit et né de la Vierge Marie, a souffert sous Ponce Pilate, a été crucifié, a mort, a été enseveli, a descendu aux enfers le troisième jour, il est ressuscité entre les morts.
The chicken is passed over the head and shoulders of the devotee as if it were a large feather cloth to wipe away any impurity or evil. Everyone has been cleansed, the chicken is oriented to the cardinal points,
4 directions.
after which it eats food which lies in the cornmeal drawing. When it eats that food, it becomes identified with the Loa. This is a signal it may be sacrificed and accepted by the Loa. The wings and legs are broken so that any impurities that it may have symbolically collected may not fly free. attitude of the Haitian towards the death and blood of these sacrificial beasts is never morbid. The intent and emphasis of sacrifice is not upon the death of the animal. It is upon the transfusion of its life to the Loa. For the understanding is that flesh and blood are of the essence of life and vigor, and these will restore the divine energy of the god.
You know, restoring the divine energy of the gods is not that different from Holy Communion, you know. But I'm showing this because of the chicken. I have a lot of chicken experiences. My great-grandfather had a chicken farm in New Jersey when I was a kid, so I was the one who helped remove the feathers. He did all the neck breaking himself. But I showed Malcolm X earlier because another Malcolm X speech inspired me with chickens. Because when JFK was assassinated, the media asked Malcolm X, Mr. X, what do you think of the assassinated American president? And Malcolm says it's a case of chickens coming home to roost. So when 9/11 occurred, that's the first thing that came to my mind. You know, I don't know anybody's politics here, but that was my thing, that the U.S. exports violence, warfare, AKA terrorism, all over the world. So these chickens are actually firebombs. His toenails are firecrackers. His body is styrofoam, but it's hollowed out with all kinds of flammable stuff stuffed inside. And his feathers are all matches. So if we were to light one in this room, we'd all be running out of here real fast. But in my imagination, I saw these two chickens flying across New York City, sitting on the World Trade Center, and then just blowing up. So that's why I made two of them. A couple years ago, I was invited to do a show at the Cameron Museum in Wilmington, North Carolina to, I guess you could say, to commemorate the School Desegregation Act. Because the people, the black community there, they were bused or at least moved to white schools. And they formed a committee because they really missed their neighborhood schools. So they wanted me to speak about their neighborhood schools. So I made several blackboards with words like black, civil, black, white, and civil rights. These boards are kind of what I call backronyms, meaning that each column represents a word. Each column, rather, is made of words that are based on the top word. So this is C-I-V-I-L. So captured, irate, vigilante is lynched, is C-I-V-I-L. Now, the first time I did something like this, I used the word America. And I have to say it, even though I'm not showing you that one, because my favorite one in my America backronyms is Adam makes Eve regret ingesting contaminated apples. So these, you know, it's just like an obsession once you start. I mean, I've done the word God, the word art, and so many. So this is rights. Ruthless idiots gun half the schoolhouse. You know, that's R-I-G-T-H. And of course, I've done black. I like this one because I've experienced this. Blues legend annoys colored kin. You know, your crazy uncle comes with his guitar and his process with no socks on, you know, and everybody else in the family is all clean and Christian. And he kind of freaks everybody out. And of course, I had to do the word white as well. White hoods intended 10 executions. So it just goes, when I first started doing these, I would do them in front of the TV news when I did the America ones. The first one I did was Columbus, but when I did America, I would sit in front of TV news and just try to make the essence of each news story with those letters. And then I started highlighting words in the Village Voice or New York Times to do them. But once I got into the groove of it, it just started to flow like poetry from my imagination. And I do them on blackboards because I learned American history in school on a blackboard. So you could say that's the conclusion of my civil rights spiel and my Africanness of this presentation. It exists in the rest of the work, but it's more overt in that work. So I have this influence in my work also. This artist, Arcamboldo. It wasn't conscious, but once I began doing my work, I began to see that he and I were kind of on a similar track. So I wanted to see what he was doing during the slave trade, what was happening in his town or his city at that time. He was a court painter. Most of you probably know him. His most famous pieces in the US are the Four Seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall. I think the spring is made out of harvested things. Winter is made out of winter vegetables. And he had a show at the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. about 6 years ago. And I was surprised to see those paintings are very, very small. I mean, like 9 by 12 inches. And all my life, I thought they were huge. But maybe you can see, so I got a bunch of shoes to put together instead of a bunch of vegetables. This is the back view of this piece. And this piece is called Soul Brother Number 1, because I'm a big James Brown fan. My first concert in life was James Brown. I saw him in 1968, when I was 63, when I was 8 years old. It was the same show as the Apollo, so the album is called James Brown Live the Apollo, came through New Jersey also. Typically, I would name all of my pieces after female attributes because they're female shoes, but I couldn't resist Soul Brother Number 1 when James passed away. And this is Soul Brother Number 2. Again, that's the back view there. This piece is called Shinufu, because I'm big on wordplay, as you may have already realized. So I have a piece in my home that says Sunufo, female figure. So I made a Shinufu piece out of shoes. And this particular head is probably about this big. This one's called Afrique. I could have called it the Black Panther, but I decided to call it Afrique instead. In my studio at this time, it was like a fruit market with a bunch of bins, and the bins each contain a different kind of shoe. So I got my bin of patent leathers, my bin of suedes, my bin of snake skins, my bin of two-tones, my bin of kitten heels, et cetera, et cetera. So each day I would go and just pick maybe 12 shoes in that category and play with them, just to limit my choices, because if I didn't do that, I would never end. This one's called Shine, a word that relates to the shoe itself. This is in a collection of the Metropolitan Museum in New York. This one is called Eye Candy, because it makes you all say that. Oh, wow, eye candy, right? I like this illusion because these are actually heels that are about this tall, but straight on, it becomes the eye like that. I made this for a show in Hong Kong just last year. This one is called Zebra Town Mask. Kind of race related because Zebra Town, I was told, and a friend of mine suggested the title, a Zebra Town is a town filled with interracial couples. So it's a Zebra Town Mask from my black and white collection. This one is called Transformer, but this is an illusion. This is not a giant work of art. This is just regular shoe size. But I photographed it that way because I'm trying to convince somebody to give me the money to make it big like this. But it really is just regular size. This is a close-up of a piece called Le Chien d'Angelou. It used to be called House Pet Number 2, but the person who purchased it wanted a better name. And she recommended Le Chien d'Angelou because she's a big fan of Salvador Dali. And you can see it here. So it's just a little canine. I got all these shoes from one place. It was a shoe wholesaler in a loft, and he sold everything except for these red and white shoes. So I bought them all, like 100 pair, all at once, for a good price. I didn't think of them as ugly. I don't know, you ladies may have another opinion. So you know, in the show I had in Hong Kong, I wanted people to have that selfie moment. So I decided I would Photoshop my shoe mask onto bodies and turn them into big canvases. So this is a life-size image of two women, and they're each wearing their mask there. And I say, okay, so I'll make a fashion magazine using my shoes. So I just like pump and kitten, because you know you wear pumps and you wear kitten heels. So these characters are Pump and Kitty, though. I don't know these two ladies, but the ones in the other previous image, I actually know who they were. These two I just found in a magazine. So I also make these figures out of shoes, and these are bronze casts. So of course, the originals are made out of leather shoes, and then it's cast in bronze to make an addition so I can have different colors to choose from. This piece is about this tall. I try to use the symbols, you know, like this top was called trans op art, because it's op art in a lot of ways, and it's images transitioning or objects transforming, but trans op art and spirit manifestation, because I'm interested in extracting the spirit from the objects in the same way that an African wood carver would be wanting to bring the life out of the wood. So in these cases, I'm using what I would call the sacred postures. You look at your African art collection upstairs, there are certain positions that are standard in a lot of tribal art. And so I mixed that with Western culture, and in the West we got the Playboy bunny. So it has bunny ears, but also in some European shamanism, the shaman is wearing bunny or animal ears. So the piece is called Downtown Goddess. This is a mother and child piece. I wish I had a better picture of the baby's face. The baby has a beautiful face. Just the sole of that shoe had a nice downturn arc at the bottom for a nice frown. But it was all pretty much simple visual transformation, because you see the mother's face is just one shoe with the sides folded down and sewed in place, but it creates the illusion of a nose and eyes and a mouth. So I was pleased with that. And that piece is maybe about that big. This one is called the Soul Sitter, S-O-L-E. With shoes, soul is always S-O-L-E in my work. Ironically, the iron has a soul plate as well, so I like things with soul. James Brown had soul. Got the Soul Sitter, I got iron soles. This is 6 feet tall, and this is bronze. This photo is shot at a foundry in Georgia, but the piece is now housed at the Newark Museum. Originally, of course, it was made out of real shoes, and then enlarged through the magic of laser technology. This piece is called With a Heart of Gold. It's actually the cover of the catalog of the show that I had at the David Driscoll Center. So this is 8 feet in diameter. This is about 3,000 shoes. Kind of like a Gerber daisy. These next few slides show that exhibition. Oh, they're changing by themselves. It's a chair made out of shoes there. Let me go back if I can. Yep. So these are all crushed water bottles. I started working with water bottles 3 years ago because I had an opportunity to do a show at a place in New Jersey, and there was no budget. And it costs a lot of money to make art, you know, especially big pieces. So I decided to use water bottles because they're everywhere. It was inspired. I was in Hawaii visiting a friend in his beautiful garden, and it looked like crushed bottles to me. So while I was there, I crushed a bunch of bottles, put them on a light table, and photographed them to make a print of that. When I got back to my studio in New Jersey, I did it again, but this time I made it with the real bottles. So you can see a close-up of one here. I don't know how many bottles there are. I haven't really counted them. This is the back of a chair made out of shoes there. use a pointer. Oh, there it is. So you can see some of the mask here. It's a shoe bouquet here. These are scorch paintings, just hot iron on wood. Yes, American Gothic, but I think it may be called African American Gothic because the woman is holding an iron and the man is holding an iron board. So you can see another view of the chair there. Now, when I make the chairs, I take the heel off the shoe. So these are all the heels here to make these pieces. So yeah, that's the African American Gothic there. So this is a 30-foot diameter canopy made from water bottles. So, but this preceded that show by about a year. I went to Boston University. I am what they call their illustrious alumni, even though I dropped out after 1 year. If you go there to the art department, they have my name and my picture hanging on the wall. So on alumni weekend, they asked me if I would make a work of art for the gallery. When I was a student there, I think in maybe 1973, this gallery was a Cadillac dealership. So I decided to make a Cadillac. So this is a full size, I think it's like a 59, maybe a 58. I could have made the wings a little larger, but that's it there. I call it aguaholic. And you see it has an interior steering wheel and seats. This piece was installation that was called From Water to Light. And it's 10,000 water bottles. So it's 2 rooms that are 15 by 15 each with a hallway between them and a chandelier in each room here. The chandeliers are the first pieces that I made out of bottles because at that meeting, a place called Grounds for Sculpture, and they said, yeah, we're really excited about this show, Willie, but we don't have a budget for it. So I wanted to do it. I was drinking water during that meeting. So that night I actually dreamed about a chandelier, and there was a Buddha in every bottle. So this Buddha is inside of each of the bottles there. And that led to a commission for 2 chandeliers for the city of Cartagena in Colombia for their biennial, which I think might have been 2 years ago. These chandeliers have religious images also. One has the Ninos Divinos, the divine baby, or the divine child, and the other one has the Virgin Mary in it. And they're still hanging there in Colombia if you go down that way. These pieces were commissioned just a few months ago. Atlantic City, New Jersey, school children collected all the bottles for this piece here. This is 15 foot tall from the foot to the tail. And in New Jersey, there's something called the Clean Communities Council, and they did an event to encourage kids to recycle. So they got the kids to collect bottles. They got Coca-Cola to donate the money, and they got me to make the art. So because Coke donated the money, this little bird, his name is Dasani, because he's made out of all Dasani bottles. And this one, the kids named him Pasquale. I'm not sure why. And this is my next to last image. This is the image that's in the canopy piece that I showed previously. And this video shows that piece in the process of being difficultly completed and hung. And this was kind of made during that one of the many shootings of African American males over the past 12 months. See, hanging it wasn't easy. Couldn't get the right look. Took it down a couple times. At first I saw it as an umbrella so they could open and close it because it has to travel to like 4 other institutions. But we didn't like seeing the armature of it, so we eliminated that armature and just hung it directly on the ceiling like this. I think I spent my whole summer making this piece 2 summers ago. So thank you for this honor, and thank you for coming and listening. I would be glad to answer any questions you have. That's my favorite part of doing talks, is questions, so don't hesitate. Students? Yes.
So say something about the images. They were inside the bottle? Or
Yes, the images were inside the bottles. The first few frames of the video showed the students putting images inside the bottle. They wanted students to be involved somehow, so.
actually, I missed.
Okay, yes.
I just wondered how you flattened the ironing boards. How did you flatten the ironing boards?
Well, you know, you put them on the ground first, and you get on them like this, and you surf them a little bit. And then you get a hammer and you just bang them flat. You just keep repeating those 2 processes over and over again. In the end, the ironing board is like a piece of paper. I mean, I can flip it like this, and it doesn't just do this, but it, you know, does the wave. That's how flimsy it is now. So we're able to put ink on the ironing board and put it in the press that way to make the images. And if you look at the pieces closer, you'll see that the lines are all embossed, which is the effect that we wanted.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said in your doors installation that it created a tension in people or a fear to walk through them. Did you know that or did you have that in mind to do when you created it, to cause that emotion in people as they went through it?
No, I didn't, but I kind of understand it. You know, often works of art get either that's nice, that's beautiful, that's great. They some get a smile, but I always like, if I get another emotion out of you, like a fear or absurd laughter, you know, I like that result. But I can't plan it out. I have to make things based on my emotional flow and see what comes out.
And I have one more question. In your use of women's shoes, are you trying to make a statement about how much women love their shoes or anything like that, or were shoes just...
No, but I'm glad they love their shoes, and I'm also glad they don't wear them a lot. Because I went to 2 thrift stores, one in Athens, Georgia, and told them what I wanted to do. And from September to January, they saved the shoes for me. I'm sure I had like over 1 million pairs of shoes.
Wow.
The university bought them all for me, 50 cents a pound. And I did the same thing in New Jersey. And 2005 to today, I still have a lot of shoes left. You know. I used the bright colors first and the beautiful ones first.
Do you find that you often revisit the materials you've used in the past? Like, do you think you're going to use more irons in the future, or you're going to use more shoes in the future?
Right. Well, I read that Picasso, at some point in his life, began to do all of his so-called periods at once. So initially, with the irons especially, I just did the irons because I wanted to, no pun intended, brand myself. You know, I started doing the irons in the period of American culture where branding was a big thing. You know, you got all Sassoon, or you got all Gap jeans, you got all Fila and all that stuff. So I deliberately exhibited irons only from 1988 to 1999. I was doing other things besides that, but in New York especially, I only exhibited irons. And I showed you a piece called 5 Stances of Domestic Defense. That was a long time after I'd stopped doing irons, but my dealer requested a show of scorches. So I made like 30 new pieces for them. So I'm not opposed to revisiting. I just have to keep busy. I'm always wanting something new, but I can't go out and make it happen. It has happened on its own. I've been doing water bottles for 3 years now, and I have several commissions, so I know I'll be doing water bottles the rest of this year. But I'm ready for something else to come in as well.
I have one question for you. You said you dropped out of Boston University.
Right.
So what did you pick up your training as an artist? And I'm always curious why people drop out as a college professor.
Okay. That's right, I forgot. This is not just a museum, this is a college.
Right. But curious about, did you apprentice with another artist? Did you, were you a part of a collective or so forth?
Right.
I'm just curious, you're very skilled, so you...
I should first say that, I was an artist before college. Some people start art late in life. I started making art at 3 years old. So by the time I got to BU, I had already had my ego fully developed as an artist. When I left BU, I went to school in New York, to the School of Visual Arts. And after that, I went to the Art Students League in New York. So I did end up with a BFA, but Art Students League didn't offer masters. I just went there for anatomy, drawing, and painting. But my major was media arts, so that was photography, video, and illustration. And this was in the 70s, so my initial goal was to be an illustrator. But in the 70s, there was not a work for black illustrators. So I struggled with that quite a bit, and then I became a computer graphics artist. And I did that for 2 years, and I got fired from that, also for similar, 70s racism. And after all that struggle, I said, I might as well just do what I want to do. And I decided to make art because I had a government scholarship that was called unemployment. I had been fired from my job, so I had, unemployment, extended claim, extended benefit. So now I have 3 years of guaranteed income from the government just to make art. So that's what I did. But the sculpture skills, which I'm still learning and growing with, are from having construction jobs. A lot of construction jobs. You're right, thank you.
My question is, what made you want to make art out of everyday items like ironing boards, shoes, water bottles, etc.?
Right. Well, those things just inspired me when I saw them. But I was, like I said, working as an illustrator and doing paintings, mostly portraits on the streets in New York on the weekends. But I took a jewelry making class at the Newark Museum. And I recognized that jewelry making was just making small sculptures. So that inspired me to start making three-dimensional things. But the objects themselves, partly because oil paint and brushes cost a lot of money. And sometimes we don't know our course in life. We think we do. Sometimes thinking that we know our course gets us off course, because there is a natural energy flow that you can be in vibrational harmony with. It just happens for you. And I think that's what happened to me with three-dimensional form. So I get an idea now. I don't always question whether it is a painting or sculpture. I just go with the flow of that inspiration.
Oh, Willie, we have a question from the live stream. I'm going to relay that. The question is, did Willie read Ta-Nehisi Coates' work? And if yes, has it influenced his work in any ways, or do you see any parallels there?
Well, I am grateful for this opportunity to be here and to share it with him, but I didn't receive his book until today. But I know that we've had similar experiences. So I guess that's the live stream answer.
Hi. So kind of going back to the previous question, the use of plastic bottles, was it just monetary? They're cheap resource, or are there also environmental things to consider with that?
Well, I think it's all those things, but a lot of things, as I said to the gentleman over here, they just flow through you. It's like when I started making art out of irons and shoes, it's because I saw an iron on the street. I didn't know that it would change my life, but it did, so I stayed with it. And as a result, I received a recycling award. And I didn't know I was recycling, you know. So it's all those things. And once I had the dream about the water bottle, the bottle began to tell me different things. So I recognized that the bottle, the plastic, is a dangerous element that holds the most valuable element in life, water. So it's a contradiction for water in a plastic bottle. So that fused lots of ideas for me. I began to think about how when you take the water from the bottle, you put air in the bottle. So now you're putting a life force in the bottle, which is your air. I began to think about the Southern or Akan tradition of bottle trees. So it all just tied into the things I think about all the time, the things that just come to me in moments of silence. I want to let you know that I can't see who's answering these questions, so if I'm not looking at you, that's why. I hear the sound back here somewhere.
Sure. Hi, thank you so much for your talk. I have a question related to process. I'm kind of in the middle if you're trying to.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So a lot of the work that you showed us today, thank you for explaining the references that you're making and what influences you're drawing on. I'm curious, because a lot of your works, to me, resonate with other modes of art, like dance and music and things like that. And I'm just curious if in your process you work outside with other artists, like dancers or musicians or things, and what that process looks like if you do.
I have over the years. You know, I've been doing this for a long, long time. So, you know, I play music, and I've taken dance class. I actually lived with a dancer for many years, and I like to think of jazz metaphors in my art making, like improvisation especially. So I'm not making any sketches. I'm just choosing my instruments and playing with them. So in that way, it's related to music and dance. I think about Jackson Pollock, you know, he didn't draw those things out. He just danced around the canvas, dripping paint, got the result. So I'm just playing with materials. It's like I got a brand new set of Legos or building blocks. Or it's like having a jigsaw puzzle with no picture on the box. So you know it's something, but you don't know what it is. You just keep the faith and play until something happens. That's how it is most of the time.
I know you said that your great-grandmother sort of inspired you to work with irons, and I was curious, did she sort of, because I know then you made it kind of image of a slave ship. I was curious, did she sort of value the iron in a positive way, or did she in some ways, like, you know, resent it? Or was there a type of iron that she liked to use particularly, or a type of fabric that she liked to iron? You know what I mean?
Right. I don't think that she valued it. I don't even know if she had her own irons or not. Like I said, she was an old lady, you know, and I started making work with irons in 1988, and by then she had moved to California. When she lived in New Jersey, I was painting, so she knew me primarily as a painter. I know she saw my show in California with irons, but because of her age, you know, she didn't dominate the conversation. You know, her daughter, my grandmother, and my mother would jump in and have more to say about the work than my great-grandmother, who was in her 90s. But I did inherit some irons from a friend whose mother was a domestic, and she was proud of her irons. I wouldn't say she customized them, but she personalized her irons by putting colored cloth around the handles and things like that. Yeah. And when she passed away, I inherited her irons as well. Anyone else?
I have a follow-up question on that same point. I'm wondering what the women in your family think about your work, particularly the pieces involving irons.
Okay. Well, all the women I showed you have passed away, except for my mom. And my mom once said to me that I was way out. But I know she's a proud mom and she likes my work a lot. She often says things like, boy, I don't know where I got you from. But I know she likes my work. I know my sister likes my work too. A lot of people who've known me for more than 20 years like my two-dimensional work a lot. And they're looking forward to me going back to being a painter or a pastel artist, and which I want to do, just a matter of time.
Hi, I have a question. Briefly, I was wondering how you came to study your collection of African art objects, how you came to Yoruba and Congo cosmologies, and if you see yourself within a trajectory of artists who have turned to tradition-based African art for particular goals or objectives.
Right. Well, I'll take it in parts here. So I was in high school in the 60s, and in the city of Newark, Amiri Baraka, AKA Leroy Jones, had come to Newark from New York and created a place called the Committee for Unified Newark. And he taught African culture. I mean, he turned all those Negroes into black people, basically. So that was the beginning of my great interest in African religion and African art. Later on, maybe a couple of decades later, I had a great friend who was a dealer of African arts. And this is when I was a painter. And he would let me come to his studio and have a personal experience with the objects. For example, he'd let me blow the ivory horn. He'd let me put the mask on my face, you know, those kind of things. The second thing is I believe in genetic memory. So if I'm a person of African descent, it's only natural that Africa comes out of me in my work. It doesn't have to be a conscious decision. And I think you said something about intention. So I want to connect with my art beyond just commodity. I have made a work of art and said to it, okay, go out there and bring back the mortgage money. You know, so I'm making the art and then I'm directing it towards something besides just you know, fun or visualization for other people to enjoy. I'm wanting to make a spiritual connection with everything in my life, including my art.
We have time for one more question.
Hello. So you mentioned watching television to make those blackboard pieces, and I was wondering, since you also mentioned the influence of music on your work, if you listen to music while you're working, and if you keep the materials that you're referencing close by in your studio, or if you try to keep that separate from your practice.
Okay. I have an expansive library of African art and tribal art in general. But I have looked at it so much over the past 40 years that I have most of it in my memory. So I don't really keep it on the work table with me. I listen to music sometime. Remember, we're talking like many, many years, decades. So there were times when I would use WBAI in New York to start my day. I know Delphine Blues on in the morning at 9 o'clock. She's gonna be playing some great rock and roll. Put Delphine on, and Delphine's off at 12. I work till 12. I know that John Schaefer, New Sounds, every night 11 o'clock, plays like space age, new age music. 11 o'clock, second shift begins, you know. But where I live now, I love the silence. Like I live in a rural community now. I don't live in a city anymore. So I usually work in silence. Now between those two extremes, I would sometimes play my own music that I was working on. Like all the music you heard in these presentations, except for the African drumming, was my own music, kind of edited for the videos. So I'll be listening to things like that I'm working on. It depends on the stage. Like sometimes, if I'm working alone, I may be wanting to learn something about nutrition. So I will play, you know, I go on YouTube and type in nutrition and just listen to those things as I work. Once I had a straight view of the TV from the studio, and I play MTV all day while working, so it changes all the time. Currently, though, it's silence.
I hope you'll join me in thanking Willie Cole for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Just a quick reminder that there should be some refreshments outside and also some posters and postcards and things like that. Please feel free to take some on your way home tonight. Thanks again for being here.